Good afternoon, everybody. And an early happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there. My name is Tom Dow. My wife, Vicki, and I have been parishioners here for just over a year, so we're newbies to you guys. But I do have to say that you have been a super welcoming community to us, and I really appreciate that. I knew this was going to happen. And I can't look over there at my girls, because if they see me, forget it. We've been coming to 4:30 Mass for about a year. We love Saturdays at 4:30. We've got our own little group back there, our tribe. Shout out to you guys. You've been great friends, great friends. Vicki and I have been married this August will be 38 years. We actually have 10 children. We have 7 here and 3 in heaven. And I actually have them, many of you know, have seen me walking around, I have tattoos. And one of my favorites is this one that I have here on my arm. It is actually an arrow quiver full of arrows. And it is based on Psalm 127, which reads, "Children are a gift from the Lord, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents." And so what I had put on my arm here is the quiver, and that represents me, and it says Psalm 127 on it. The strap that holds it and gives it support represents my wife. The 7 arrows that point out the top are for my 7 kids, and the decorative feathers below are for our 3 in heaven. And it's important to me because I see it so often, and it reminds me of a husband, of being a dad, of the importance my kids are to me, but of the greater importance I am to them, that I have to be a dad and a good dad to them. And so that's multiple times a day a great reminder of that relationship I have with my family. Also, though, I have one other that I got several years ago in a men's group that I was a part of. One of the gentlemen was talking about our relationships and the relationships that we have with each other here, so the horizontal relationships we had. But then he talked about the vertical relationship that we should all have, that we have between us and God. And so I thought that vertical word really hit me, and I thought, I love that a lot. And that was my first introduction to tattoos, because I went out and I got the word vertical put right on my wrist here, so that whenever I look at it, I'd be reminded of that important relationship. And it has worked, because I've been praying recently that I be God's hands and feet, and that I can serve him in that way. And then 2 weeks ago, Scott asks me to come talk today, and I'm like, okay, hands, feet, and maybe voice, right? So I said yes, but I want my words and my stories to be the Holy Spirit speaking and maybe sharing something with you from what I've experienced. And for me, and for maybe several of you out there, Father's Day, for me, with my father and fathers, and I'll explain that, wasn't easy. I'm adopted, and about 20 years ago, I found my adopted family, met them. We had a lot of time together. We spent travels to see each other, and in and amongst those times together, I was introduced through pictures to my birth father, who had passed away. And it was wonderful to have that tie-in, because I'd been searching for it for so long. And about 2 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, I actually found my birth father's family, and we connected, and my wife Vicki and I actually took a trip to Florida, and we met them, and it was amazing to be with my birth father and his brother and his nephew and their families. We had a meal together. We actually went to the cemetery, and I saw my dad's tombstone, and it brought real contentment and closure to me, until a month later, when I got a call that, in fact, they found out I was not related to them whatsoever. And it was funny and devastating all at the same time, because we had spent so much in that search and opportunity. And then I reflected on my growing up with my dad, my mom, and my sister, and my adopted dad was quite a dictator. He ran the household. It was his way or the highway. We didn't have much say in what went on, and he was disrespectful to me in my growing up and what I decided and wanted to do as an adult moving forward, and I found that to be extremely difficult. And the reason I share these 2 stories with you is because in difficulties of any trauma situation or difficulty like that, there's always a gift. And the gift to me in both of those was, in the first story, the gift was that I didn't have to be defined by the fact that I knew who my birth father was. And I didn't need to let that destroy or hinder me in my growth as a dad and as a husband moving forward. And with my dad, who I grew up with, the dictator, I learned how not to do a lot of things being a dad. And that became useful to me. I hope my kids agree. So for the past 36 years, I've been on autopilot. I've been a dad, running like crazy, but loving it. I remember getting phone calls at 10, 11, 12 at night from my son away at college who needed to talk because he was struggling. So I'd get up and go get on the phone with him and talk for a while. We would get knocks at our bedroom door at night with a child who perhaps had a bad dream or a difficulty falling asleep. So I'd go sit in the living room or in their bedroom, and I would talk, and we would share, and I'd pray with them and hopefully bring them God's peace and let them get back to sleep. I remember following a quarter-mile-long transmission fluid leak on a road up to Walgreens parking lot where my daughter's car was to help her out when she gave me a call. And even these recent days, getting phone calls, hey, Dad, we want to come over and go swimming. Okay, I'll vacuum the pool and make sure the water is warm. So, and I know dads can agree, we're always on autopilot, and I love doing that. And I say that because I don't want you as a dad to underestimate the importance of what you do to your kids. I pray for my kids every day, for their families, their health, their protection, that God direct them in what they're supposed to do. And I feel that as dads, one of the best gifts we could give our kids is to love mom, their mom, to show her respect. Because the kids watch us, and I want them to know the love that flows from me, but I also want them to see how they should be when they grow up. Because they watch us, and they mirror us, and they will take that with them. So please, love their mom. It shows so much respect and so much love to the kids when you do that. I'm a contractor, and I'm frequently in people's houses talking to parents, husbands and wives about the jobs they need done. And it's not uncommon that I see the husband talking the wife down or moving her out of the way or not letting her be included in conversation. Sometimes their kids are there watching, and it just breaks my heart to see that because the kids are watching what's going on. Your kids are watching what's going on, so give them that good example so they can take that into their relationships moving forward. 18 years into our marriage, my wife's past sexual abuse that were repressed came back to her, and we had to deal with that situation. It was very difficult. And in so doing, she put in a decade's worth of work, day and night, on herself to be a better person, to be a better wife, to work through that difficult situation. And I supported her in it 100%. But a couple years ago, maybe a year ago, we were having a disagreement, and she said, you know what, Tom? She looks at me in the eye and she says, all of this stuff that's going on isn't all on me. You've got a lot of your own crap that you need to deal with too. And we talk about it a lot, but you've not been doing that. And she said, it's time that you put the effort in for yourself too. And she really hammered it into me. And I just looked at her and I stared her straight in the face and I said, yes, dear. She was right, 100% right. And from that point on, I started working on Tom as best I could, and I still do today. And I invite you to do the same, to work on yourself, because when you work on yourself, you become a better husband, you become a better dad, you become a better employer, employee, neighbor, brother, whatever it is that you do. When you're making yourself better, God can work better through you because you're in a good place to do so, right? So that would be my invitation to you, is work on yourself and let the goodness that God created in you come out so that you can become the better version of yourself, so that you can be his hands and feet and voice if it be called upon to do. So if you're a father now, if you're a father soon to be, I got a son out there who they're gonna have a baby any day. Awesome. Grandchild, number 7 or 8. Except, well, they lost one. This is a new one coming, and it's awesome any day. So if you have kids who are at home with you, if your kids have moved out, it doesn't matter. Keep doing the work on yourselves, because in so doing, your kids will do it, and then you will be changing your corner of the world. And to my family, I love you guys so much.
Well, thank you, Father Peter, for this opportunity to present my faith journey. And I just want to say a thank you to all of you, and thank you for your patience this morning. I'm not one that seeks out the spotlight, and sure enough, I'm not one that likes to talk about myself, but I'm here this morning. My story it touches my heart and very, very personal. It's humbling for me to be here with you to share that. It's something that I don't talk too much about at all. So when I was asked to speak this morning, after my yes, I said, okay, what would you like me to speak about? And they said, well, speak about your dad. Tell us a little bit on how you grew up. And then how did that translate into your fatherhood? So I want to tell you right up front, where I started, it was complete opposite the way I grew up as to the way that I've raised my children, complete opposite. And if it wasn't for the grace and mercy of our Lord, I wouldn't be standing in front of you this morning. So what I would like to do is maybe just start out and introduce my family a little bit to you, and then I'll take you back to New York, and I'll talk a little bit about my dad. So I'm celebrating with my beautiful bride, Wendy. 38 years of marriage. We've been parishioners at St. Thomas for over 30 years. We have 6 children, 4 girls and 2 boys, all of which have received their sacraments. Most of them received their sacraments right here at St. Thomas. Let's see, 3 of my children are married. We have a very recent, it's only hours in the making, my son, Ryan, just engaged to Amanda. Yay! Yeah. So Father will have another wedding to plan pretty soon, right? So all of my children graduated college. They have their master's degree, and they are on their way on their career. So I think as parents, very, very happy to see them on their way. Most recently, last year, we welcomed into our household 2 beautiful grandchildren, a little boy and a little girl. And most recently, I'm retired, so I get to spend my time with my family, and I dedicate time here at St. Thomas to various different ministries. So what pulled on my heart as I was trying to reflect on the past and what I'm going to share with you this morning is the reading from St. Paul on hope. And hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. And through my time in childhood, I never lost hope. And my brief definition of hope is that hope is a gift from heaven whereby we can trust God. And that just fuels our faith. So let me take you to New York, where I was raised. Let me share a little bit about my dad. So I was raised on Long Island, New York, little town, Miller Place, two sisters. And I want to credit my dad for the formation of my faith. He was very big on reading the gospel. You had to read the gospel if you want to know about Jesus. And most importantly is that we also had to tell others about what we read, and most importantly, listen to the way they interpret the gospel. That gives us a better perspective on Jesus and a better perspective on our life. Never forgot that. Also, some of you may know an individual named Bishop Fulton Sheen. My dad worked with Bishop Sheen in the shelters in New York with the needy. And his acts of charity have also stayed with me a great deal. And I'm very passionate about the homeless, about those that are marginalized. So those are the things that stuck with me with my dad, but my dad had another side to him. My dad fought a battle of alcoholism. And for those of you that have had a member of your family as an alcoholic, you know that's not an individual battle, that's a battle of the family. And as we were young, growing up, my dad was also a violent alcoholic. Never knew when he was going to come home after drinking, if he was going to bust up the house, hurt my mom, or just quietly go to sleep. And, you know, that, I guess that type of environment, we weren't invited too much to our relatives' homes at all because they didn't want to deal with that type of drama. Quite frankly, you know, activities that I had in school, I didn't invite my dad. I didn't want him to say something, fall down, to do something that I think all of you understand how cruel kids could be. So it was a lot easier to just keep him at bay. The household environment that we had in our family, it was probably the definition of dysfunctional. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. My mom and dad would fight a lot. And I think that caused within me to be very independent, maybe a little self-righteous. And it hardened my heart a bit. Well, my dad had another battle that he fought, and that was the battle of cancer. At the age of 46, he was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a roller coaster, up and down. We would be in the hospital, and then he would come back. You know, throughout all of my childhood, never lost that hope, though, and thought that my dad would win that battle. But as time progressed, it didn't seem like that was going to be the outcome. It wasn't until 1981, January, where then he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He had less than a year to live. And at that time, he just got so wrapped up into himself, and we were wondering, what's going to happen to the family? I mean, we didn't have a life insurance policy for my dad. We didn't own our own home. We did have a business that we were running, but it was leveraged. So what was going to happen after my dad's passing? What was going to happen to all of us? There was no really answers to that other than, you guys will figure it out on your own. So in April 18th, he went into the hospital for the last time. Each day, he got progressively worse. My mom called us all together on April 22nd. She wanted the family present. We would be stopping by, but at this moment, she thought it was important for all of us to be here. She called my dad's brothers and sisters, and on that day, we were all there. It was the afternoon of the 22nd, and I got to tell you, there was a calm that was in the room. As I was watching my dad, his breath was getting shallow and shallow. And I can see out of the corner of my eye, a nurse came into the room and whispered to my mom. And I got to tell you, anyone that's in the nursing field right now, you are just earthly angels. I just have to say that. My mom then just came to us, made an announcement in the room to say, all right, it's time to say goodbye, your final goodbyes to your dad. She pulled up a chair next to my father and took me by the arm and said, Albert, sit down, say your goodbyes. And in my mind, I heard, say I love you, say I love you, say I love you. And each and every time I said, no, it's just words. It's just words. It's just words. I mean, that's the way we were. We weren't a family that we weren't affectionate. We didn't say, I love you, but we knew in our hearts that we did. So honestly, I don't know really what I said to my dad. I think I said, Dad, I'm going to miss you. My mom took me up, and the next person up was my sister, and shortly thereafter, my dad passed away. Now, I got to tell you, to the dads that are out there, I know we're going to go home. We'll have probably some nice gifts, those that'll make us laugh, those that are heartfelt. But I got to tell you, I think you would agree with me. The best present in the world is to hear your child say, Dad or Daddy, I love you. And you know what? I robbed my dad of that moment. And I can never get that back. Never. But I didn't think too much about it at the time because I said that's not the way we were raised. We weren't that type of family. So fast forward, went back to college because I did stop to help the family out during my father's time in the hospital. So went back to college, met my wife Wendy. After graduation, we got married, and 15 months later, we welcomed our first child. I have to tell you, that was a defining moment for me. When I looked at that child, Melissa, for the first time, my heart just exploded. All I wanted to do was hug her and kiss her and tell her that I love her, something that I wasn't accustomed to at all in family life. When I left them the first night at the hospital and driving home, I cried. Everything just came to bear. All of the visions that I had of being raised back in New York, there was a better way of loving, a better way to love. And I didn't find out till later that crying is a healing process from our Lord. When we were about to take Melissa from the hospital, I sat down with Wendy and I said, Wendy, do you know what to do when we take her home? Because I don't. Fortunately, she said yes. But that was the last piece. That was the arrogance of a young man being totally broken, didn't know where to go on this. But the way that I only knew to go was to Jesus. And I asked God, I said, Lord, help me to be a dad. Teach me to be a father. I don't have any other examples, and the way that I was raised is not the way that I want to raise my family. And that hope and that trust, Jesus heard my prayers, and he answered them. And I didn't see it right away, but as I take a step back and look at it, as Jesus drew me closer into him, all of those distractions in life, friends and music and sports, so all those things that interfere with the family were just taken away. And the Lord had me focus in on God, family, and work. It was absolutely beautiful. So in the light of time, I'm not going to take you through all of the things that we've done in order to raise the family, but let me take you through just a couple that are really close, that I'm really vested in. The first and foremost is raising my family was going to church and receiving the Eucharist. We went to church every single Sunday. And with the kids' crazy schedule with 6 children, all different activities, we would have to bounce around different masses and, Father Peter, sometimes different churches, and that happens. When we had tournaments, we would find a church and we would go to Mass. When we're on vacation, we found a church and we go to Mass. Matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, the family's going to be on vacation. There's going to be 16 of us walking into Mass. How awesome is that, huh? How awesome. You know, the next thing was prayer. Prayer was important. Prayer to instill in the children how to communicate with the Lord and how to hear that communication through the Bible. And we have a special place in our family and in our hearts for the Holy Mother. You may see me after Mass at the station here. You'll see our family go. And each and every Sunday, we said the Rosary as a family together. And we collected all the people that we've touched along the week, and we lifted that up in our living room each and every Sunday, and we still do that today. The next critical piece was mealtime. Again, with a big schedule and a lot of different priorities, it was always important for us to sit down and have a meal together and be focused in on one another and have that conversation and talk about what's happening in each other's lives and listen to each other and what was going on in each other's lives. Very important, and always started our meals with grace. And finally, what we did together is had fun. We played. We played as a family. We played basketball, Legos, tea parties, you name it, on their terms. We were there on the ground, crawling around, playing with the kids. A good way to bond. So as I close my comments this morning, I want to just leave you with two things. First, tell somebody you love them today. Don't wait to say, I love you. Don't. And listen, I know we do some terrible things to each other, especially within households. And I'll leave the forgiveness sermon to Father Peter, but I can tell you right now, healing does not start, and healing cannot be completed without love. So give the gift of love today. Give the gift of God today. And the second piece, let me leave you with, is that it doesn't make a difference on how you start. It's all about how you finish. You know, and if you're not sure on how to get there, there's someone that knows the way. All you have to do is surrender to that. You know, we give so much to technology today, to AI, and we even surrender our families as we're driving and don't touch the wheel. But you know what? What about GI, God's intelligence, right? Take your hand off the wheel. Let God steer you. He's going to take you to some amazing places that you wouldn't even dream about. So again, Father, thank you for this opportunity. To all of you, thank you. May God bless all of you and your loved ones, and happy Father's Day. Thank you.
Happy Father's Day to everyone. And I want to thank Father Peter for giving me the opportunity to talk today. My name is Bob Curlin. My wife Loretta is sitting right over here. There's 16 of us in our family, and 3 of them are able to show up today. Dave, Courtney, and Kelly, my granddaughter. I'd like to start with a little background. My wife and I have been married for 60 years. Actually, we started coming to St. Thomas when it was just a school up the road here before the church was even built. I have 8 grandchildren: Nicholas, Emily, Zachary, Andrew, Mia, Natalie, Susan, and Kelly. And I'd like to share a story starting with my dad. His parents were living in Russia, were fleeing from the Nazis, probably just carrying a couple suitcases, ended up in New York, arrived in New York, and then that settled in Boston. They had 2 sons, my dad being the oldest. He met my mom in Philadelphia, and they were married. They moved to a small row home just west of Philadelphia and had 2 sons. I was the oldest. The interesting thing is, the neighborhood they moved into was Italian, Polish, Irish, and Jewish. My dad was drafted shortly after moving in. He served in a destroyer escort when I was only 2 and didn't come home until 2 years later. Being away for so long, he took me everywhere he went. I really felt so loved by my dad. He was humble and kind. An example of this was he had a small summer house in Brigantine, which is a little island next to Atlantic City. And he'd be sitting out there on a hot summer day. The trash men would be coming by. The first thing he wanted to do was grab a couple beers and bring them over to him. The mailman always stopped by the porch and had a coffee with him walking by. Excuse me. An extra chair was always at our kitchen table, and it wasn't unusual for a fisherman to stop in to see my parents. Still had some scales on his shirt from where he was just fishing and cleaning the fish. And one other story that I'd like to share is that my youngest son, Mark, was dating Lori, his future wife, and he wanted to introduce him to my dad, so they flew in from Chicago into Philly. And Lori she really didn't want to, it was a late flight, and she was really happy about that because she could get everything settled and everything and meet him in the morning. Well, as soon as they pulled up in front of the house, my dad come running out, it was late at night, and gave her a big hug. His priorities in life were God first, himself, and then family. When I was young, I had a lot of questions. Being Jewish, I had trouble understanding what God looked like. Where is he? What is he like? Where did he live? Well, I was next door. We had an Italian family next door. Billy Tresca was one of my best friends. And I forget what we were talking about, but then I finally said, you know, I have no idea what God looks like. He said, really? Took off, ran upstairs, came back down with a picture of Jesus. I go, wow. First thing I did was run next door and show my parents. I don't want to tell you how that went. You know, I remember another time, I didn't do really great in school. I remember junior high school, there was a conference with my mom and dad went there, and I knew this wasn't going to go well. So what I did, I went to bed early, pretended I was sleeping. And I'll never forget, my dad came in, and he said, you know, I know you're having trouble. Don't worry about school. You're going to do fine in life and everything. I just want you to know that I'll always love you no matter what you do. And that was really a start of my foundation. You know, my dad said, you know, you got to treat God as a friend, being part of my life. My dad helped me better understand the Bible. And one story that I can never figure out, maybe some of you have, but the story of Noah. I always question them, like, well, all these animals, they bring all these animals on board. You got your family here. How are they going to separate them? Where are they going to put all the food? Where are they going to put, you know, the other stuff? You know, it just, and he shared with me that he really didn't think the story of Noah was about animals, about actually the ark. What it really is about is when you're born, you have your own ark that you build. Every good thing you do is another step to building your ark. And when you finally take your final breath, that's what you bring with you to God. He shared with me also, you know, signs of God. Where do you find God? He said, always look for signs of God in nature, in the eyes of someone you care for and love, and the sunrise. On this island that I said my dad, they had a house there. I don't know how many times he used to take me for a walk at the end. It was a wildlife preserve, pitch black, the seagulls are always facing one direction, and then he showed me the birth of a new day, and just, I never forgot that. The sunrise to me is very special. Oh, I have one other story here to share with you. I'm jumping ahead right now. My oldest son was getting married in Kansas City. Father Jim was the pastor at that time, was marrying him, and Loretta and I were giving communion. Now, my brother and my father were there. My father never knew that I converted to be Catholic. So moving forward, my brother had called me later and said, "Did you convert to be Catholic?" And I said, "Yes." I thought that was the end of it. So he went back, they had an electrical supply house in Philadelphia, and the workers in the back were Polish and Catholic and very, very structured with the church. So I asked one of them, if someone's given communion at church, is that really a big deal? So whoever that is had to be way up there in the church. No, that's not the end. So he told my father. He went to my father and he said, I think Bob has converted to be Catholic. My father looked at him and said, any way you can find God, that's what's important. I do have a prayer that I say every day, maybe a couple times a day. My prayer is, please forgive me for my actions and my words that may have hurt someone. Please help me to be a better person. Let me turn the page here. I'd like to share with you a little bit about becoming Catholic and going to church. I started really going to church before I was even, until I changed to be Catholic, with my family all the time. I prayed along with them and did everything. And so there was a day where I had to drive Father Jim to the airport. He never knew I was Jewish. In the meantime, while I share, we're trying to get the church built and everything else. He's given me all these plans and everything else to go to Catholic families and try to build a church, and they're telling me why they can't. And I'm thinking, I'm Jewish, and you're telling me, you can't. So he asked me, he says, what's the problem with it? Do you ever think of converting over to become Catholic? And I said that, well, I don't know. He says, I said, why not? I said, I don't believe in the devil. I had to think of something. And he said, do you believe in evil? And I go, yes, I believe in evil. And so I did go through RCIA, did convert to becoming Catholic. And there were certain things that really brought me home. And I think one of the readings that really touches my heart, probably one of the best ones, is when Jesus went over and he was praying to God to really pass on what was going to happen to him. Tried 3 times, friends are sleeping, came back again, and just pleaded with him, could he please make this pass? The only thing I can think of, if that was one of my sons, I could never do that. How can anyone sacrifice their own son? How can anyone love me more than Jesus? And that's what really I think about a lot, his love for me. There's another, and I'm sorry if I'm not quoting this exactly, but there's another one when Jesus' friends were out fishing. Remember that? They were fishing all day, never caught anything. They come back, and then Jesus says, let's go out again. Well, I grew up in the ocean. I remember getting up at 6:30 in the morning to go fishing, coming back maybe at 6:30 at night, not a bite, sunburn, tired. And if someone came to me and asked me, come on, let's go out and go fishing again, there's no way I would do that. For him to do that, bring back the nets full, it was incredible. But that was only part of the story, the way I look at it. He wants me to go out and spread the word, and he wants me to know that it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to go back out again and out again and out again, being humble and trying to reach other people through love. One of the things that I've learned from him to be patient, understanding, love, humble and kind, and humor. And I think humor is one of the best things that I see with Jesus. I'd like to share you a story. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the God wink, maybe. Things that happen, and you look back and you go, whoa. Well, I have one story with my daughter-in-law. We were all going, our whole family was going down to Chicago. We got into the parking lot. It was like a 6 or 7 story parking lot. Driving around, no spaces, driving around, nothing. We finally got to the roof, and I figured, oh, we're going to have to go all the way back down again and find something. Just as I turned the corner, I saw Lori's car on the corner and a space right there. Now, what's the chances of thousands of cars parked there, and I ended up right next to my daughter-in-law's car? I can go on with other things in our life that you could just see that God was very, very present in our lives and our family. I'd like to quickly go over, my story. God had plans for us from our first birth. Loretta and I had a mixed marriage. And so, I went into the Coast Guard, and we weren't deciding we're going to marry in the synagogue and to a church. Went to a rabbi and said, no, no sense marrying her. It's not going to work. So we did. Found a young priest. I really liked what he said, and we did get married in a small church in Atlantic City. The interesting part is when I got there, you know how you feel one side of the church, and the other side was supposed to be for my family, and none of my relatives have ever been in a church. So I look over to Loretta, I said, well, maybe some of your family can sit over there, so fill the side a little bit. And before I knew it, my whole family was there. To me, the sacrifice they made to go there for our marriage was unbelievable. So we got married. We had 3 boys. I had a promotion to move away. I was working for a major corporation. We were living in South Jersey. Our whole time, we had everything made. My parents were there. Her parents would go to the shore. We had babysitters, and we were really loved by both parents. And all of a sudden, we got a promotion to Columbia, Maryland, in Baltimore. That was the hardest thing, the sacrifice that our parents made for us leaving. And that was the start of our trip with our boys. We continued to have really a lot of support. Without the support of my father-in-law and my mother-in-law and my parents, we wouldn't have had a successful marriage. The one thing that we look back, God was with us with every step, every single step. One quick story, when we eventually ended up, we had 4 moves and eventually moved in here to Naperville. And I found some things that my dad had sent to me. During the war, my dad was being trained in Chicago, and my mother there came to visit him, and I have a picture of him having dinner, and he's saying how wonderful Chicago is. But he didn't realize that he was going to have 8 grandchildren here, and we're going to be living here. Well, last but not least, as I said, Loretta and I have been married for 60 years. Just bear with me here. She's my foundation, my best friend, great mom, loves me unconditionally, and most of all, an unbelievable communicator. Have any of you ever heard of Hallmark cards? Ever since we were married, she's sending Hallmark cards to everybody. She still sends Hallmark cards. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I got a box like this high with all Hallmark cards in there. She communicates with our daughter-in-laws, her grandchildren, our boys, either by texting, never misses a birthday or a holiday. And the best thing was her finding out how to text, which she communicates with our family almost every day. One other quick thing, going back, but when our kids were born, it was unheard of to see your child, the birth of, that was unheard of. I needed special permission. Watching the birth of our 3 boys, to me, was something very, very special with God, and it was a bonding between Loretta and I with our boys. I'd like to talk about our daughter-in-laws for a little bit. There's not one that we don't feel, not as a daughter-in-law, but our daughters. They it'd probably take another 30 minutes to share with you all the things that they've done for us and helped us along the way. I'd like to just end this. It's hard for me to do, you know. Have any of you ever saw the movie Up, you know, with the balloons and everything goes over, and where he really thought that his wife, where they're going to retire in this unbelievable island, a beautiful island with sun and sand. So his wife passes away, but he says, I'm going to find the island. And he's flying all over, can't find it, all kinds of things happening to him and everything. And he finally comes back, and he finds some type of book, I forget, or a letter of what she really, really enjoyed. What she really enjoyed was them sitting together every night. Well, that was a God wink, because after dinner, we'd have about an hour. Loretta breaks out the popcorn, we have tea and an ice cream every night, sitting together. And that just reminded me of the story. That was the same thing that they would like. It was just wonderful. The one thing, and again, it's actually been probably more than 60 years since we've known each other, because we knew dating and knew each other before that. Just in ending, probably the worst thing, that I could ever think of happening, that I wake up some morning and reach over and she's not there. I don't even like to think about it. But what that does do, it makes sure that my love for her every single day stays like that. I want to thank you for listening. And again, a happy Father's Day.
Good morning. For many years, my wife Sally and I have thoroughly enjoyed sitting in these pews, listening to engaging people expound on what Mother's Day or Father's Day means to them. The fact that I am up here today is proof positive that either the well of such engaging people has run completely dry, or Lori and Scott made the strategic decision they need to throw a real clunker in every now and then, thus setting the bar low enough that enticing future recruits would be easier, since they would know they can't do worse than me know. My presence is also clearly a tribute to Lori Culberson's sales skills, as she turned my long pause and drawn out, "Oh no," into agreeing to give it a whirl. Anyway, here goes. The first reading today speaks of wisdom and how wisdom has been God's partner since before Earth's creation. The second reading touches on faith, which allows hope, even in the face of life's setbacks. The gospel then quotes Jesus telling the disciples of the Spirit of truth. I'm going to equate that with integrity, as in our ability to adhere to the truth in living out our lives. Wisdom, faith, hope, and integrity. Wonderful attributes a parent can strive to have and to hold. Sally and I try to count our blessings constantly, and chief among them, those things that we thank the good Lord for on a regular basis, is that we totally won the proverbial parent lottery. Both Sally, who was born and raised in our state capital, Springfield, and I, born and raised in the suburb of Evergreen Park, were gifted with amazing parents. They personified the wisdom, faith, hope, and integrity our readings today highlight. Not in a Brady Bunch verbal lesson way, but in the way they lived their lives as married couples and parents navigating through life's challenges and setbacks, and they had several. Sally was the oldest of 3 children of Louis and Frida Berg. She attended Catholic grade school and high school in Springfield. I was the 6th of 7 children of Tom and Natalie Mino. I attended Catholic grade school and Marist High School. Louis Berg was a civil engineer for the city of Springfield. He also had served in the U.S. Navy. Tom Mino had served in World War II with the Army and the Communications Corps. He became an electrician, both very noble professions, but they both wanted more in terms of being able to achieve what they envisioned for their families. Sally's father, Louis, after working all day in his real job, would routinely come home, get a dinner bucket from Frida, and along with friends similarly situated, spend most good weather evenings building spec houses. My dad, Tom, had a wife that took full-time work as a line packing supervisor at Nabisco, usually working the 3 o'clock to 11 o'clock second shift. That left Dad with single-parent duties most weekday evenings until the oldest kids got old enough to take some of them over. Then he'd pick up Natalie at work at 11 o'clock, come home and get up at 6 or so and start all over again. What Dad couldn't buy, he'd make. That gene was not passed on to me. He built the detached 2-car garage along our alley, which became his workshop. We lived in a classic 2-story bungalow in Evergreen Park. By the time the 4th or 5th child came along, and we kind of arrived on a 4-year or so plan between 1944 and 1965, more room was needed. Dad added a single-story brick addition to the back of the existing brick house, which added a powder room, master bedroom, and dinette area to the now enlarged kitchen area, and a crawl space underneath that he could access from the basement for additional storage. There remained, after that addition, only 1 full bathroom in the house. I have no idea how they made that work. I do recall a lot of shouting matches among my sisters. Both sets of parents enjoyed loving marriages that spanned decades until the deaths of their respective spouses. My folks were both raised in southern Indiana, a little town called Bedford. Mom had 1 brother. Dad had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Mom's brother had a house directly across the street from where my grandma lived. He and his wife also had oodles of kids, close in age to our families. We visited there often. All my other grandparents had passed by my earliest memories. Sally's dad had 2 sisters. Sally's mom had 1 brother and 2 sisters. For most of our lives together, Sally's family has remained in the Springfield area. Both of us grew up fully experiencing the importance of family and maintaining family ties. My mom and dad didn't have much vacation time, yet every year I can recall we took at least a 1-week camping trip, 2 weeks for farther destinations. Sally's family did not camp, but took frequent driving vacations to Florida, the Ozarks, and other favorite places where they would typically rent cabins on lakes and rent pontoon boats and do some fishing and swimming. Now, even though Sally and I both attended University of Illinois in Champaign, we did not know each other there. She was a year ahead of me. We both graduated in accounting and passed the CPA exam. Sally got a job with Arthur Young, which then was one of what was called the Big Eight accounting firms, the year before I got there. It was summer of 1981 when we first met at the firm. I learned a lot in 3.5 years at AY, the biggest of which was that I was not destined to stay there very long. I left for a corporate tax job. Sally stayed on much longer. We had become very good friends by the time I left in early 1985. By late 1986, I had not only kept in touch, but somehow convinced her to marry me, and we did so in October of that year. We bought a shoebox-sized townhome in Lincoln Park. In spring 1988, our first child, son Louis, arrived. 16 months later came son Nick. So I had clearly not learned the spacing thing too well from my folks. Things got tight, space-wise, soon after that, so we began looking for larger confines. There was nothing in our price range in Lincoln Park. We searched westward along the Burlington Northern route until we found Naperville, which in 1991 was actually quite affordable for us. We will have been in the house we bought then for 34 years this August. At our new neighbor's suggestion, we tried out St. Thomas and have enjoyed our stay here ever since. Daughter Jamie arrived in 1992, followed by Tony in 1993. While Sally would have gladly taken on another 6 kids, and I'm serious, I somehow convinced her we should retire my jersey after Tony arrived. Our kids loved St. Thomas. They went through RE and received the sacraments, other than the first 2 baptisms, and Jamie was married here during COVID. As anyone who raised a child knows, the old saying, bigger kids, bigger problems, proves itself over and over. It was by no means a seamless journey for any of our kids from infancy to adulthood. Along the way, there were many challenges that made us rely on our faith for hope. Those included not 1, but 2 frantic car rides to Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis. Once, son Louis was airlifted there from West Lafayette with a punctured lung. Another time, he was taken there from the Indy 500 with a very serious spinal cord injury that permanently cost him the use of his legs. Our faith was severely tested and heavily relied upon in those instances, as well as less so during some comparatively trivial trials involving all the kids. We can look back on those difficulties now and see how all the kids pulled together and supported each other in their times of need. This gives Sally and me faith and hope that when we are long gone, they will go to bat for each other, as they've already shown they will. Further, during the spinal cord nightmare that Louis endured, this parish was petitioned to send up prayers for him, and we were then and will eternally remain very grateful for all of those prayers. We relied heavily on this parish community, as well as the staff and a spinal injury support group at Marion Joy in Wheaton to get through. We are happy to take this opportunity to tell all of you that Louis is thriving and living a very full and satisfying life despite his disability. All 4 of our kids are 30-somethings now. We now have been further blessed with 2 grand cats, 1 grand dog, 1 granddaughter, 1 grandson, and 1 more grandson coming in July. So, what was the point of this meandering autobiography? Well, getting back to the items I highlighted from today's readings at the outset: wisdom, faith, hope, and integrity. Sally and I have been blessed to have had fathers and mothers that displayed those attributes every single day. They never lectured us about the importance of such things. They modeled them for us as they brought us to adulthood. We only hope that we have done a fraction of that for our kids. So on this day set aside for honoring fathers, whether in heaven, as Sally's and mine are, still alive, biological or adoptive, official, or those men that have mentored or otherwise acted like a father to someone in need of such nurturing, many of which there are in this very parish community, we wish all of those fathers a very happy Father's Day. Thank you.